Can you imagine being 8 months pregnant, standing in a room full of strangers, when your mother-in-law hands you an envelope that reads, 47 reasons my son should leave you? What would you do? Because let me tell you, what she forgot she left in that printer, that last page was about to end her, and I'd known for a week. Hey everyone, I'm Morgan. I'm 32, a labor and delivery nurse from Franklin, Tennessee. And if you've ever been smiled at by someone who's sharpening a knife behind their back, trust me, you're gonna want to stick around for this. And seriously, drop a comment below and hit subscribe if you're with me on this one. So 3 years ago, I was just a girl from Cookeville, Tennessee. Population, 33,000. My dad drove long-haul trucks. My mom was a teacher's aide, making $19 an hour. I was the first in my family to get a bachelor's degree, BSN, Middle Tennessee State, 2016. Graduated with $38,000 in student loans and a used Honda Civic with 112,000 miles on it. I'm telling you this because understanding where I started is key to understanding the Ashfords. I met Joel at a friend's wedding in Nashville. I caught the bouquet, mostly because I have quick hands from catching babies, and he asked for my number because I made him laugh during the electric slide. 14 months later, we were married. Small ceremony, backyard of our fixer-upper on Lewisburg Pike. That house had original hardwoods, a porch swing Joel hung himself, and an $1,800 mortgage we split right down the middle. We're not rich people. We're working people, living in a wealthy zip code because I found a foreclosure listing before Vivian Ashford, Joel's mother, did. Small, knowing smile, that detail, believe me, mattered to her. My biggest weakness, always, has been over-responsibility. I hold other people's pain because I feel built for it. I hold women's hands through the hardest moments of their lives. I know how to stay calm when everything is falling apart. And at 8 months pregnant with our first child, our little girl, my calm was about to be tested by someone who'd been sharpening her knife for 3 whole years. Vivian Ashford is 61. She owns Ashford Realty, the top agency in Williamson County. Her face is on park benches, church bulletins, and a huge billboard on Highway 96 that reads, Vivian Ashford, your neighbor, your realtor. She's 5'4", 120 pounds, and has never, ever raised her voice in public. When her husband Gerald died 5 years ago, she planned the funeral, sold 2 houses during the viewing week, and wore a black Chanel suit to the burial that she'd ordered online the night of the diagnosis. That should tell you everything you need to know. Vivian became the sole engine of the Ashford name. She ran the agency. She ran Thanksgiving. She ran the seating chart at church. The first time Joel brought me home, she looked at my Target dress and my scuffed flats and said, I hope you understand what it means to be an Ashford. I smiled. I thought it was an invitation. It was a warning. For 3 years, it was a steady stream of passive-aggressive comments. My little hospital job, my cooking. Bless your heart, not everyone grows up learning to roast a chicken. My background. Cookeville is nice for what it is. She'd say these things with a smile, always in front of witnesses, always with plausible deniability. If I pushed back, I was sensitive. If I stayed silent, she took it as agreement. She never once called me by my first name in front of her friends. I was always Joel's wife. I thought the baby shower would be the worst of it. Joel's older sister, Leanne, well, she was another piece of the puzzle. She divorced her husband, Craig, 2 years prior. Vivian, naturally, took control, moved Leanne and her daughter, Harper, into the guest house behind Vivian's mansion. Leanne had been marketing director at Ashford Realty, but after the divorce, Vivian demoted her to administrative support, updating MLS listings for $36,000 a year. Living rent-free, yes, but very much in her mother's shadow. Leanne resented Craig for leaving. She resented Vivian for the demotion. And Cy, she resented me for having what she'd lost, a husband who came home at night. She hid it well, mostly with brunch invitations and Pinterest nursery advice. But the resentment leaked. One Tuesday, she sat at my kitchen table, looked at my belly and said, You're just the girl who got pregnant. That's the only reason Mom hasn't pushed harder. I set my mug down. Pushed harder on what, Leanne? She just stirred her coffee and changed the subject. And then there was Joel. My husband is a good man, he loves me. But he also grew up in Vivian's house, which means he learned early that the path of least resistance was the only path that didn't end in a 2-hour phone call. His default response to anything involving his mother was always the same. That's just how she is. He said it about the cooking comments. He said it about the Cookville jabs. He said it like weather. Something you endure, not something you fix. When we announced the pregnancy at 12 weeks at Sunday dinner at Vivian's, Joel held my hand under the table and said, "We've got some news." Vivian put down her fork. She looked at my face, then my midsection, and I watched the calculation happen behind her eyes. Not joy first. No. Assessment. Then the smile. "Oh, how wonderful." She hugged Joel for 11 seconds. She hugged me for 3. The first comment came before dessert. "I hope you're planning to take at least a year off. Ashford women don't put newborns in daycare." I told her I'd be back at work in 12 weeks. We needed the income. My shifts paid $34.50 an hour, and our mortgage didn't care about family traditions. She just tilted her head, like I'd said something impossibly quaint. Within 2 weeks, I had 4 emails about attachment parenting, a blog post titled "The Hidden Cost of Working Mothers," and 3 church ladies telling me I looked overwhelmed by the pregnancy. She wasn't lying to be cruel. She was building a narrative, establishing to everyone who mattered that I was fragile, struggling, not quite up to the task of carrying the Ashford name into the next generation. Leanne piled on with little jabs. "Oh, Mama Bear is tired today. Are you sure you should be on your feet that much?" One night, I told Joel what I was seeing. He just rubbed my feet and said, "They're just excited, Morg." I pulled my feet away. "They're not excited about the baby. They're establishing authority over the baby." He looked at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. That was our first real friction, and it scared me more than Vivian did. My plan for the shower was simple. 10 friends, my apartment, paper plates, a sheet cake from Publix, a onesie decorating station. Budget, $200. My nurse friends would come, we'd laugh, someone would cry about the tiny socks, and I'd open gifts on my own couch with my feet up. That plan lasted 6 days. Vivian called on a Wednesday. "Morgan, I've already booked Wisteria Hall for March 13th. 35 guests. It's what Ashfords do." I tried to push back. I said I wanted something small. She said, "Small is fine for a second baby. This is your first, and it's my first grandchild." Joel, standing in the kitchen eating cereal, gave me the look, the one that means let her do this, without saying it aloud. So I let her do it. Vivian chose the colors, blush pink and gold. She chose the caterer, pockets, $42 a head. She chose the guest list, which I saw when the invitations arrived. 35 names, 26 of which were Vivian's real estate contacts, church friends, and the wives of men Gerald golfed with. 9 were mine. My nurse colleagues received invitations on heavy cream cardstock that read, "Hosted by Vivian Ashford, Ashford Realty," in gold foil across the bottom. Not hosted by the Ashford family. Not celebrating Morgan. Vivian Ashford, Ashford Realty. My baby shower had a corporate sponsor, and it was my mother-in-law's real estate firm. I sat on the edge of my bed with that invitation in my hands and felt the baby kick. I watched my shower become Vivian's event, and I told myself it didn't matter. It was one afternoon. I could survive one afternoon. I had no idea what she was actually planning for it. 3 weeks before the shower, at Sunday dinner at Vivian's, I excused myself to use the bathroom. The upstairs one was occupied, so I headed toward the half bath near Vivian's home office. The office door was open. The printer light was blinking amber. Paper jam, or low toner, the kind of thing you ignore when you're hosting dinner. But the output tray had pages in it. I don't know why I looked. Instinct. Curiosity. The particular radar that develops after 3 years of living on the wrong side of someone's smile. I could see the top edge of a typed page, black ink, Times New Roman, what looked like a numbered list. The top read, 47 Re. The rest was covered by the page above it. I stopped walking. My hand was 6 inches from the tray. I could hear Vivian in the kitchen telling Leanne to use the good serving spoons. Joel laughed at something on TV. 35 weeks pregnant, standing in my mother-in-law's hallway. My pulse pounded in my temples. I didn't pull the page. I don't know why. Maybe because I already knew, somewhere deep down, that whatever was in that printer was something I needed to see alone. Without the sound of Vivian's voice carrying down the hall, I used the bathroom, washed my hands, and sat back down at the dinner table. I smiled. I ate cobbler. I drove home with Joel talking about Titans draft picks, and I said nothing. I didn't sleep that night. By morning, I'd made a decision. My mother-in-law booked a venue I didn't ask for, invited people I don't know, and now there's something in her printer that starts with 47. If you've ever walked into someone else's house and felt a cold draft that had nothing to do with the air conditioning, if you've ever trusted your gut when everyone around you said you were overthinking it, you know exactly what I did next. Stay with me. Monday morning. Joel left for school at 6:45. I called Vivian at 8:15. I think I left my gray cardigan at your house yesterday. Vivian said she was already at the office, showing a property, and Leanne was doing school drop-off for Harper. Just use the spare key under the blue pot on the porch. You know where it is. I did know. I drove 11 minutes from our house to hers. I parked on the street, not the driveway. I don't know why, but it felt right. The blue pot, the spare key, the front door. I walked straight to the office. The printer tray still had pages in it. Same amber light blinking. Same stack. I pulled them out. 8 pages, stapled in the upper left corner. Snorts, a small, humorless sound. The cover page read, 47 Reasons My Son Should Leave You, compiled by Vivian Ashford with contributions from family and friends. I sat in her desk chair and read all 47. Number 3, she serves frozen pizza for dinner and calls it a meal. Number 9, she has no understanding of how to dress for a family function. Number 17, she has no family name and no legacy to offer the Ashford line. Number 23, she refused to take the Ashford name professionally at the hospital. Snorts again. Number 31, she makes Joel choose between his mother and his wife. And number 41, she trapped him with his pregnancy, and he is too decent to say it. I read each one with the same steady hands I use when a delivery goes wrong. When the cord wraps, when the heart rate drops, when a mother looks at me and says, "Is my baby okay?" Nurse come. The training takes over. You assess. You document. You act. Then I turned to the last page. It wasn't part of the list. The last page was different. Different formatting. Not the numbered list. Not the same margins. It was an email printout. Vivian's printer had pulled it from the queue and stapled it to the back of the list like a receipt stapled to a bag. The header read, from vivian.ashford.com to kayla.bennett@gmail.com. Date, February 18th, 3 weeks before the shower. Subject, recatching up. The body read, Kayla, I know this is unusual, but I've thought about it for a long time, and I believe Joel was happier with you. I'm presenting something at the shower that should make things clearer for everyone. Once she sees that the whole family agrees she doesn't belong, she'll leave on her own terms. If she doesn't, I've already consulted Richard Crane about protecting the Ashford assets and the house on Lewisburg Pike. Your flight is booked for March 15th. I told Joel you're just passing through Franklin on your way to visit a friend. He doesn't suspect anything. Vivian. I read it twice. Kayla Bennett, Joel's college girlfriend. The one he dated for 2 years at UT Martin before they broke up senior year. Now a real estate agent in Charlotte, North Carolina, which meant Vivian found her through industry connections. Richard Crane. I didn't know the name yet, but I wrote it down. March 15th, 2 days after the shower. The timeline clicked into place like bone setting. I pulled out my phone. I photographed every page, all 8, front and back. I checked the resolution. I checked the lighting. I replaced the stack in the printer tray, exactly how I'd found it. Amber light still blinking. Same slight angle. I walked out, locked the door, put the key back under the blue pot. I sat in my car for 10 minutes. I wasn't shaking. I was thinking. I drove to the Publix parking lot on Murfreesboro Road and sat with the engine running. I had options. I could drive to Ashford Realty right now, walk into Vivian's office, drop the photos on her desk, and watch her face collapse. I could call Joel at school, tell him everything, let him confront his mother. I could cancel the shower, file the photos away, and spend the next 5 years pretending I never saw what I saw. Each option had a problem. Confront Vivian privately and she denies it. She's been denying things for 3 years, and she's better at it than I am. Tell Joel now, and he calls his mother from the school parking lot. Vivian cries. Vivian says it was a draft she never sent. Vivian says she was trying to protect him. Joel, who has spent 34 years believing his mother's tears, hesitates. The conversation becomes about Vivian's feelings instead of Vivian's plan. And the 35 guests at that shower never know who she really is. I sat there for 40 minutes. A woman with 2 kids in a double stroller walked past my car 3 times. I'm a nurse. I deliver babies. The critical moment in labor isn't the first contraction. It's the last push. You don't intervene at the first sign of trouble. You monitor. You wait. You let the process reach the point where the truth has to come out. And then you act with every ounce of skill you have. Vivian wanted an audience for my humiliation. She booked the venue. She'd invited the guests. She printed the list. She'd stapled her own email to the back of it. If she wanted an audience for my destruction, I would give her the same courtesy. I would go to that shower. I would let her hand me the envelope, and I would let the last page speak for itself. That night, after Joel fell asleep watching SportsCenter, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and went to work. Kayla Bennett. I found her on Instagram first. Public account. 1,200 followers, real estate agent at Keller Williams in Charlotte. Blonde highlights. White blazer in her profile photo, a golden retriever named Biscuit. She'd liked 3 of Joel's Facebook posts in the last 2 months. A team photo from baseball season, a picture of our house after Joel painted the shutters, and a sunset he'd taken from our porch. 3 likes in 2 months from an ex-girlfriend who hadn't interacted with his page in 4 years. I checked Joel's phone next. We've always shared passwords. No secrets. That was our rule from the start. No messages from Kayla. Not one. But there was a text from Vivian, sent 10 days ago. Old friend of yours, might be in town next week. Kayla Bennett. Remember her? Joel had replied, Huh, that's random. Sure, I'll say hi if she's around. He hadn't mentioned it to me. I don't think he thought it mattered. It mattered. Next, Richard Crane. I searched the name and found a website. Richard Crane, Esquire. Estate and trust attorney, Nashville, specializing in family asset protection, trust modification, and prenuptial agreements. I called my friend Dana the next morning. Dana is an L&D nurse married to a corporate attorney named Rob. I kept it hypothetical. Can a mother-in-law modify a family trust to exclude a daughter-in-law and grandchild? Rob's answer, relayed through Dana over lunch at Panera. If she's the sole surviving trustee, she can amend the trust document however she wants. If the husband's father set it up, and the father is deceased, the mother likely has full authority. Gerald Ashford died 5 years ago. Vivian wasn't just being cruel. She was executing a plan, legal, financial, and personal. And she timed every piece of it around my baby shower. The following Sunday, I almost felt sorry for her. Dinner at Vivian's again, the weekly ritual. Vivian was quieter than usual. She overcooked the green beans, which in Vivian's kitchen is the equivalent of a public breakdown. After dinner, I help with the dishes, because I always help with the dishes. Because that is who I am, even when I'm standing next to a woman who has written 47 reasons for my husband to leave me. We were alone at the sink. Joel was in the den with Harper. Leanne had gone back to the guest house with a headache. Vivian stared at the soapy water for a long time. Then she said, When I married Gerald, his mother, Ruth, told me I'd never be a real Ashford. She didn't look at me. She looked at the suds. She said it at our wedding reception, in front of Gerald's entire family. I was 23 years old, standing in a dress I'd paid for myself because my parents couldn't afford it. And Ruth Ashford told everyone within earshot that Gerald was marrying beneath him. She rinsed a plate, set it in the rack. I spent 15 years proving her wrong. I built that agency from nothing. I raised 2 children. I buried my husband. And I earned this name. She turned to me then, and her eyes were wet, but her jaw was set. I just want to make sure it means something when it's passed on. I dried the plate. I didn't say anything. I understood exactly why she needed to control everything. Ruth Ashford had planted this in her 40 years ago, and Vivian had been watering it ever since. Generational cruelty, passed down like silverware. I understood it. I still couldn't let her control us. Tuesday night, Joel was at a coach's meeting. I lay on our bed, 2 pillows under my knees, because at 8 months pregnant, that's the only position that doesn't make my lower back feel like it's being pried apart with a crowbar. I opened my phone, swiped to the photos, the list, the email. I zoomed in on the email. Joel was happier with you. I stared at that sentence until the letters blurred. Vivian hadn't written I think, or I believe, or maybe. She'd written it as fact, the way she writes listing descriptions, with the authority of someone who expects you to accept her version of reality without inspection. I zoomed on another line. Your flight is booked for March 15th, 2 days after the shower. The sequence was clean. Shower on the 13th. Vivian presents the list. Morgan crumbles. Kayla arrives on the 15th. Joel reconnects with the woman his mother chose. Richard Crane handles the trust. The house on Lewisburg Pike. Our house. Our foreclosure, our $1,847 a month, gets folded back into the Ashford portfolio. I touch my belly. My daughter kicked hard right under my ribs, the way she always did when I was lying down. My heart rate spiked. I know, I said out loud. My mother-in-law had written 47 reasons for my husband to leave me. She'd emailed his college ex-girlfriend. She booked Kayla a flight to Nashville. She'd hired an estate attorney to restructure the family trust. And she'd scheduled every piece of it around my baby shower. The event she'd insisted on hosting, in the venue she'd chosen, in front of the guests she'd invited. The shower wasn't a gift. It was a stage. I saved every photo to cloud storage. I printed one copy on our home printer. I sealed it in an envelope and put it in my purse. Then I turned off the light and lay in the dark with my hand on my daughter and my plan in my bag. 1 week before the shower, Leanne texted, "Hey, Mama, can I come by and help with the nursery? I have some ideas." She didn't have ideas. She had instructions. She showed up with a bag from Pottery Barn Kids and spent 20 minutes rearranging the changing table I'd already organized, moving the diapers to the wrong shelf, and refolding onesies I'd folded the night before. Then she sat on the nursery glider and said, "Mom's been so excited about the shower." I was on my hands and knees organizing the bottom drawer of the dresser because I couldn't bend at the waist anymore. "I'm sure she is," I said. "She's put so much work into it." Leanne picked at the arm of the glider. "She really has. She just wants it to be special." "I know." Silence. Then Leanne said, "She wants what's best for this family, Morgan. She always has, even when her methods seem a little," she searched for a word, "intense." I stood up, which at 36 weeks is a 3-stage process involving a hand on the dresser and a sound I will not describe. "What things are you talking about, Leanne?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "You said her methods." "What methods?" Leanne looked at the ceiling, then at the door, then back at me. "Just, the shower planning, the guest list. She can be a lot." She stood up, smoothed her jeans, and headed for the hallway. Then she stopped in the door frame and turned around. "Just don't make a scene at the shower, okay? It's supposed to be a happy day." She said it gently. She said it like a friend. But the word scene told me everything. Leanne knew about the list. She knew what Vivian was planning. She probably helped write it. Number 41 didn't sound like Vivian. It sounded like a divorced woman projecting her own wreckage onto someone else's marriage. That evening, Joel had his feet on the coffee table, clicking the remote between a Predators game and an ESPN Classic rerun. He was talking about spring baseball, a sophomore pitcher with a fastball that topped out at 82, a new batting cage. I watched him talk. His jaw moved the way it does when he's excited, slightly off-center, like the words can't come out fast enough for the thoughts behind them. I love this man. I loved his enthusiasm for 17-year-olds who couldn't hit a curveball. I loved that he hung a porch swing with his own hands and packed my lunch on mornings. He knew I had a 12-hour shift. I considered telling him everything. I pictured it. "Joel, your mother wrote a list." "Joel, she emailed Kayla." "Joel, she hired an attorney." And then I pictured what would happen. The phone call to Vivian at 9 p.m. The tears, the denial, the rearrangement of facts until Joel wasn't sure what he'd read, what he'd heard, what was real. Vivian had been reshaping his reality for 34 years. I wasn't going to fight that battle in our living room on a Tuesday night. "Joel, do you trust me?" He looked up from the TV. "Of course I trust you. If something happens at the shower, something unexpected, will you trust that I handled it the best way I could?" He set the remote down. "What are you talking about, Morg? Just promise me." He studied my face for a long moment. I don't know what he saw. "Okay," he said. "I promise." He picked the remote back up. The Predators scored. He pointed at the screen and said something about the power play. I sat next to him with my hand on my belly and my secret in my chest, and I watched him cheer for a team that was winning while I prepared for a game he didn't know we were playing. The week before the shower, I worked 3 shifts. Monday, I delivered a 9-pound boy to a woman named Tasha, who squeezed my hand so hard she left bruises on my knuckles and said, "You're the calmest person I've ever met." Friday, I delivered a girl, 7 pounds 2 ounces, to a 20-year-old first-time mom whose own mother stood in the corner of the room weeping and saying, "You did so good, baby." I watched that grandmother hold her granddaughter for the first time. And I thought about Vivian, and I thought about my daughter, and I clocked out and sat in my car in the hospital parking garage for 15 minutes before I could drive. At home, I prepared. Phone charged to 100%. Photos checked. Still in the cloud, still on the device. Resolution sharp enough to read every line. The printed backup sealed in an envelope in my purse, tucked between my wallet and a pack of peppermint gum. Thursday night, I called my mom in Cookville. "Mom, I might need to come stay with you for a few days after the shower." Silence. "Then why?" "Nothing yet. I just want you to be ready." "Morgan." "Renee." Her voice dropped the way it does when she means business. The same tone she used when I was 16 and came home past curfew. "Tell me what's going on after Saturday." "Mom, I promise I'll tell you everything after Saturday." She didn't push. My mother knows when I've made a decision. I confirmed the RSVP count that night. 35 guests, assigned seating, Vivian at the head table next to Leanne. I put the phone down and lay in the dark and listened to Joel breathe and told my daughter we'd be okay. Saturday morning, March 13th. I woke at 6:15. Joel was still asleep. I showered. I dried my hair. I put on the dress I picked 2 weeks ago, navy blue. Not pink, because I am not a prop in Vivian's color scheme. I ate 2 scrambled eggs and a piece of toast, because I'd learned from 12-hour labor shifts that you never go into a difficult situation on an empty stomach. I checked my phone. Photos still there. List, email, every page, every line. Cloud backup confirmed. I opened my purse. The sealed envelope sat between the wallet and the gum, right where I'd left it. Joel came downstairs in khakis and a blue button-down, tying his tie in the hallway mirror. Co-ed shower. Vivian had insisted. She wanted the men there. She wanted Joel there. Of course she did. "You look beautiful," he said, adjusting his collar. I smiled at him. It was a real smile. I wasn't angry at Joel. I was angry for Joel. For the version of him that didn't know what his mother was capable of. For the version that trusted her the way children trust the people who raise them. We drove to Wisteria Hall in silence. Not uncomfortable silence. The kind that settles between 2 people when one of them knows something enormous and the other is thinking about whether the Predators can make the playoffs. I was ready. The way I'm ready for a delivery that I know will be complicated. Prepped. Calm. Instruments laid out. Aware that something painful is about to happen and that my job is to hold steady through it. We pulled into the parking lot. Pink balloons tied to the railing, bobbing in the March wind. 35 cars. Vivian's white Lexus in the first spot. 47 reasons. An ex-girlfriend's flight booked for Monday. An estate attorney on retainer. My mother-in-law planned every detail of my baby shower, including my exit from the family. She just forgot one thing. She left the evidence in her own printer. If you've ever walked into a room knowing exactly what was about to happen while everyone else smiled and passed the cake, you know the weight in my chest right now. Stay with me. Wisteria Hall looked like a wedding venue that had swallowed a bottle of rose gold. White columns, freshly painted trim, and inside, someone had draped every surface in pink tulle and gold ribbon. Vivian's taste, down to the last detail. 35 guests sat at round tables with floral centerpieces I hadn't chosen, placed cards I hadn't approved, and a sheet cake that said, "Baby Ashford," in calligraphy because apparently my daughter didn't have a name yet. Vivian's church friends filled the front tables. Perfectly blown-out hair, pressed linen, the kind of women who bring casseroles and opinions in equal measure. Her agents and their wives flanked the sides, smiling the way people smile when they know who signs the commission checks. My 5 nurse colleagues, Dina, Priya, Terry, Shayla, and Becca, sat at the back table near the kitchen, looking like a search and rescue team that had wandered into a garden party. My mom had driven from Cookville and positioned herself in a chair near the door, purse in her lap, watching the room the way she watched parking lots at night. Peripheral. Careful. Already mapping exits. Vivian held court at the head table in a cream blazer and her signature pearls, clipboard beside her plate, running the event like a shareholders' meeting. Leanne sat next to her, fidgeting with her napkin, eyes darting between Vivian and me, like a woman waiting for a car to run a red light. Joel guided me to our seats, hand on the small of my back. Just enjoy it, Morg. I smiled. We played Guess the Baby Food. We did the diaper raffle. I laughed when I was supposed to laugh. I touched my belly when someone pointed a camera at me. And the whole time, I watched Vivian, glowing, beaming, performing the role of doting grandmother for an audience of 35. And I let her. Gifts came in waves. Silver rattles in velvet boxes. Onesies folded like origami. A stroller from Joel's coaching staff, top of the line, carried in by 2 assistant coaches who looked deeply uncomfortable surrounded by that much pink. I thanked everyone. I meant it. These people had driven across Franklin on a Saturday to celebrate a baby they hadn't met yet, and most of them had no idea what was sitting in Vivian's stack of prepared remarks. Then Vivian stood. She picked up a champagne flute and tapped it with a manicured nail, the way women in movies do before toasts that end marriages. If I could have everyone's attention. The room quieted, forks settled. 35 faces turned toward her, warm, expectant, ready for something sweet. I've prepared something special for our mother-to-be. She walked to me, holding a cream-colored envelope, heavy cardstock, gold wax seal on the back. My name written across the front in her handwriting. I spent weeks on this, she said, loud enough for every table to hear. It comes from the heart. She placed it in my hands the way you hand someone an award. I could feel the weight of the pages inside. Multiple sheets. I already knew what they were. I'd photographed every page a week ago, standing at her printer with my hands shaking and my daughter kicking against my ribs. But the room didn't know. They saw a mother-in-law giving her pregnant daughter-in-law a heartfelt letter. Some women were already reaching for tissues. I broke the seal. I opened the envelope. I pulled out the pages. The cover sheet. Typed. Centered. Bold. 47 Reasons My Son Should Leave You by Vivian Ashford. I looked up. Vivian was still smiling. The room hadn't caught up yet. I turned the pages. Number 1. She refuses to take Joel's schedule into consideration when planning meals. Number 7. She has never once hosted a proper holiday dinner. I kept turning. Number 14. Her family has no legacy of education or achievement. Number 23. She doesn't attend church regularly. Number 31. She prioritizes her career over her duties as a wife. The quotation marks around career. Vivian had typed those on purpose. Number 41. She trapped my son with a pregnancy. 47 items, single-spaced. Each one a small, precise incision. I'd read them all before, alone in my bathroom with my phone camera. But reading them here, in a room full of people who thought they were watching a blessing, hit differently. Whispers started. Guests leaned forward, trying to read the pages from across the table. Someone at the nurse's table, Dina probably, said, "What is it?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. Vivian answered for me. She turned to the room, chin lifted, pearls catching the overhead light, and said it like she was reading the minutes at a board meeting. 47 reasons. And she still thinks she belongs in this family. Gasps. Not the polite kind. The involuntary kind. The sound people make when they've witnessed something they can't unsee. A church friend at table 2 set down her fork like the food had gone bad. Vivian turned to Joel, still composed, still certain. "Read it, son. You'll see I'm right." Joel took the papers from my hands. He was smiling, the confused, half-knowing smile of a man who assumes this is a joke because the alternative is too ugly to process on a Saturday afternoon. He started reading. The smile left his face by page 2. He flipped faster. By the last page, he was white. Joel looked at Vivian. His hands were steady, but his jaw had gone tight, the way it did on the sideline when a ref made a call that cost his team the game. Except this wasn't a game, and there was no ref to blame. "Mom, what is this?" Vivian didn't flinch. The truth. Someone had to say it. Joel looked at me. I was sitting in my chair with pink ribbon looped around the armrest and a paper plate of cake I hadn't touched balanced on the table beside me. 8 months pregnant, hands folded in my lap, face showing nothing. Nurse come. The face I wore when a delivery went sideways at 3 in the morning and panic was a luxury nobody in the room could afford. Joel turned back to Vivian. "This is insane." He started to set the papers down on the table. Done. Ready to walk away from it. Leanne leaned in. "Joel, just read it. Mom spent a lot of time. Joel's voice hit a register I'd heard, maybe twice in 4 years of marriage. Not shouting. Worse than shouting. Controlled fury, with the volume turned up just enough to reach every table in the room. She spent time writing 47 reasons I should leave my pregnant wife. The room was electric. Nobody moved. A woman at table 4 had her hand frozen halfway to her water glass. The coaching staff guys at the gift table looked like they wanted to climb out a window. My nurse colleagues were on their feet. Terry was already standing, shoulders squared, ready to intervene. But I caught her eye and gave a small shake of my head. "Not yet." Terry sat back down. She trusted me. They all did. That's what happens when you work labor and delivery together for 6 years. You learn when someone has a plan and when someone is drowning. I had a plan. Joel! My voice came out even, pitched low. The same tone I used when I needed a panicking father to hand me a cord clamp instead of passing out on the delivery room floor. "Before you put those down, read the last page." Something in it stopped him. Not anger. He'd heard my anger before. Not hurt. He'd seen that, too. This was something else. Certainty. The voice of a woman who had been carrying a secret for 7 days and had chosen this exact moment to set it on the table. Joel looked at me for a beat, then flipped to the last page. His eyes moved across the text once, slowly, then again, faster. His hand stopped moving. He read it a 3rd time, and I watched his face rearrange itself, not into anger anymore, but into something worse. Recognition. The look of a man connecting dots he'd been refusing to see. The room was silent, except for the ice machine humming through the kitchen wall and the faint click of someone's heel shifting under a table. Joel looked up at Vivian. When he spoke, his voice had dropped. Not louder, quieter, the way a temperature drops before a freeze. "How long?" Vivian blinked. Her smile was still there, but it had stiffened at the edges, a mask drying in place. "How long what? How long have you been talking to Kayla?" The name landed in the room like a stone in a pond. Most of the guests didn't know who Kayla was. The ones who did, the church friends who'd been around when Joel and Kayla dated in college, shifted in their seats. Vivian's clipboard hand tightened. She hadn't expected the last page. She'd printed 47 reasons, and forgotten she'd left the 48th one stapled to the back. Vivian's smile cracked down the center. "I don't know what you're, Mom. I'm holding it." Joel lifted the last page so the room could see it. A printed email. Vivian's name in the sender line. Kayla Bennett's in the recipient field. "Your email to Kayla Bennett. From your printer." He paused, the paper trembling once in his hand. "You booked her a flight. You told her I'd be available." His voice dropped. "You hired Richard Crane to modify the trust." Whispers erupted across the tables. Not polite murmuring, but the sharp, involuntary hiss of 30 people processing something ugly at the same time. Vivian's hand went to her pearls. That was taken out of context. Joel read aloud, his coaching voice, the one that carried across a gym. "Joel was happier with you." He kept reading. "Once she sees the whole family agrees, she'll leave on her own." He looked up from the page. "Your flight is booked for the 15th. He lowered the paper. The room was still. A church lady at table 3 had both hands over her mouth. An agent at table 5, a man I recognized from Ashford Realty's holiday party, stood up, folded his napkin, and walked out the side door without a word. Joel's coaching buddy, Dean, a man who'd once helped us move a couch up 2 flights of stairs and had never said an unkind word about anyone, leaned back in his chair and said, "Jesus, Vivian." Vivian stood frozen. The composure she'd worn all afternoon fell away in pieces. The gracious hostess, the clipboard commander, the woman who ran a realty empire and a church committee and a family with the same iron scheduling gone. What was left was raw. Everything I did was to protect this family. Her voice broke on the last word, high and cracked. And for half a second, she sounded like someone I almost recognized. A woman defending a wall she'd spent decades building. Joel didn't match her volume. He went the other direction. Quiet, almost conversational. And that was worse. "You hired an attorney to cut my wife out of the trust." He let that land. My daughter, too. While she's 8 months pregnant. The trust is for Ashfords. She is an Ashford. Flat. Final. The room heard it the way you hear a door lock. A small, final sound that changes which side of the threshold you're standing on. I hadn't moved from my chair. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't stood up or pointed a finger or let a single tear fall where anyone could see it. I sat with my hands on my belly and my back straight, and I watched because this was never my fight to escalate. It was Vivian's fight to lose. She turned to me. Her eyes were wet, but her jaw was set, and I could see the exact moment she stopped defending herself and started attacking. You planned this. You found it and you planned. You left it in your own printer, Vivian. I said it the way I'd say. The baby's heart rate is steady. Factual. Measured. Nothing extra. I just asked him to read it. The room exhaled. Vivian stood alone at the front of a party she'd organized, surrounded by guests she'd invited, undone by words she'd written. Leanne tried to salvage it. She leaned forward in her chair, voice pitched high, the same placating tone she'd used when she warned me not to make a scene. Joel, Mom was just worried. Did you help write this? The question landed flat and hard. Leanne's eyes darted to Vivian. A reflex, the automatic check-in of someone who'd spent 37 years asking permission before answering. Vivian said nothing. No rescue. No cue card. Leanne was on her own. I contributed some points. Which ones? Silence. Joel held up the crumpled pages. Number 31. He read it flat. She prioritizes her career over her duties as a wife. He looked at Leanne. That sounds like you. Leanne opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Joel didn't wait. You live in Mom's guest house. He ticked it off. You work at Mom's agency. You eat at Mom's table. His voice tightened. And you wrote reasons to throw my pregnant wife out of the family. Each sentence was a door closing. Leanne sat back in her chair as if the words had physical weight. Her face crumbled, not all at once, but in stages, like plaster giving way along old cracks. First the mouth, then the chin, then the eyes. At the kids' table near the window, Harper, 10 years old, coloring book abandoned, was watching her mother come apart in front of 30 people. She didn't understand the details, but children don't need details. They read the room the same way animals read weather. And she knew this weather was bad. I felt a twinge behind my ribs that had nothing to do with the baby. Harper was collateral damage. She hadn't written a list. She hadn't booked a flight for anyone's ex-girlfriend. She was 10, and her mother had just been dismantled in public. And there was no ribbon or balloon in this venue that could fix what she'd seen today. Joel held a stack. All of it. 47 reasons, plus the email. Crumpled at the edges now, damp where his grip had tightened. He looked at me. He looked at Vivian. He looked at the room full of people who had come for cake and onesies, and were leaving with a story they'd tell for the rest of their lives. Then he spoke, and his voice was steady in a way I'd never heard from him. Not coach steady, not husband steady, but the steadiness of a man who'd found the floor after weeks of not knowing it was shaking. My wife delivers babies, his voice carried without effort. She holds women's hands through the hardest moments of their lives. He paused. She works night shifts and still asks me how practice went. He wasn't performing. He wasn't looking at the audience. He was looking at the papers in his hands, reading from something deeper than the list. She moved to a town where she knew nobody. For me. He studied. She learned every name at my mother's Christmas party. His jaw set. She never once asked my mother for anything. Not money. Not approval. Not permission. He gripped the stack with both hands and tore it in half. The sound was louder than it should have been. That sharp, fibrous rip of heavy paper in a silent room. He tore the halves again. For pieces. Set them on the table in front of Vivian. Neat. Deliberate. The way you return something that was never yours to give. There are your 47 reasons. You can keep them. Vivian stared at the torn pages. A gold ribbon from one of the gift bags had fallen across them, catching the light. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Somewhere in the kitchen, the ice machine cycled again, filling the silence with a sound like small bones settling. Vivian was shaking. Not the theatrical kind. The real kind. A tremor that started in her hands and climbed through her shoulders and settled in her voice. You're choosing her over your own mother. Joel didn't hesitate. I'm choosing my wife and my daughter. He held her gaze. The way Dad chose you and Grandma Ruth tried the same thing. The room went so quiet, I could hear the click of a ceiling fan chain swaying above the head table. Everyone heard it. Vivian's face, I'd studied it for 4 years, cataloged its expressions the way I cataloged patient vitals, did something I'd never seen. It collapsed inward, not anger, not performance, something old and buried. A wound she paved over with clipboard schedules and commission checks and 47 typed reasons. Ruth, her own mother-in-law, who had humiliated her for 15 years, who had told her she wasn't good enough, who had tried to break her marriage the same way Vivian was now trying to break mine. Joel had found the nerve she'd spent 3 decades insulating, and he'd pressed it in front of every person she'd ever needed to impress. 47 reasons. Vivian had 47 reasons I didn't belong in this family. I had one reason I did. I was the woman her son chose. That had always been enough. It had been enough for Vivian once, too, back when she was the young wife fighting Ruth's contempt. But somewhere between surviving it and inheriting power, she'd forgotten which side of the door she'd come in through. One email stapled to the back of a list, left in her own printer, and everyone in this room now knew who didn't belong. Vivian picked up her purse from the back of her chair. She walked to the door without looking at anyone. Lean gathered her things, took Harper by the hand and followed. The door closed behind them with a soft click that sounded permanent. My mom crossed the room before the door finished closing. She didn't say anything, just sat beside me and put her arm around my shoulders and held on, the way she'd held me when I was 9 and fell off my bike and skinned both palms. Except now I was 32 and 8 months pregnant, and the scrape was somewhere deeper than skin. My nurse colleague, Dina, pulled her chair over. Did you know? I knew. How long? A week. Dina stared at me. And you sat through the games, the gift opening? She shook her head. You played guess the baby food with that envelope on the table? I had to let her do it. I kept my voice steady. If I'd stopped her, it's my word against hers. I looked at the torn papers on the table. She'd have called me hormonal, said I was making things up. I let that settle. Now it's her own words, in front of her own guests. Dina exhaled and shook her head. Priya, behind her, was smiling. The tight, satisfied smile of a woman who'd watched too many patients get dismissed and finally seen one win the chart review. Joel sat beside me, took my hand. His fingers were warm and slightly rough from years of handling basketballs and chalk. I'm sorry. You didn't know. I should have. You know now. That was enough. We sat there while guests filtered out. Some hugged me on the way past, pressing my shoulders gently, the way you handle someone who might break. Some just nodded. They'd say more later, when they had words. A church friend of Vivian's, Margaret, silver hair, kind eyes, stopped and touched my arm. I'm sorry, honey. I had no idea. None of US did. I said, that's how she wanted it. The venue staff came to clear the tables. Pink balloons drifted above empty chairs, trailing gold ribbons that brushed the floor like something left behind after a parade nobody enjoyed. 3 days later, Joel drove to Vivian's house alone. He was gone 3 hours. I didn't pace. I folded onesies and sorted the gifts guests had left behind and tried not to think about what version of herself Vivian was deploying behind closed doors. He came back looking tired but clear. The way people look after they've said something they should have said years ago. I told her we need space. A lot of it. What did she say? She said I was making a mistake. What did you say? I said the only mistake was not listening to you sooner. That week moved fast. Joel changed the locks. Not dramatic, just practical. The way you reset a boundary that should have existed before. He called Richard Crane's office and confirmed what we suspected. Vivian had consulted about modifying the family trust to exclude me and the baby. Crane's paralegal was careful with her words, but the file existed. The trust was unchanged. Vivian had started the process but hadn't finished, which meant she'd lost her nerve or been waiting until after the shower to pull the trigger. Joel texted Kayla directly. I didn't ask to see the conversation, but he showed me anyway. Don't come. My mother doesn't speak for me. Kayla's reply. I'm sorry, Joel. She was very convincing. He deleted the thread and set his phone on the counter. Neither of us picked it up for the rest of the night. Clara Morgan, Ashford arrived on a Tuesday, 7 pounds 4 ounces, at Williamson Medical Center, The same hospital where I'd delivered other women's babies for 6 years. My colleagues delivered mine. Dina coached my breathing. Priya monitored the strip. Terry held my hand during transition and told me I was doing great, which is exactly what I tell my patients, and hearing it from the other side made me cry in a way I hadn't allowed myself in months. Vivian was not in the waiting room. Leanne texted, "Congratulations." I texted back, "Thank you." Nothing more. We set one boundary and wrote it nowhere. Vivian could meet Clara when she acknowledged what she'd done. No deadline. No ultimatum. The door would open when Vivian knocked with honest hands. And not before. Months later, Leanne reached out on her own. No Vivian present. No script. She sat across from me at a coffee shop on Main Street and said, "I was wrong and I'm sorry, and I don't have an excuse." I accepted. Carefully. One coffee at a time. Joel and I saw a counselor. 3 sessions on family boundaries, which doesn't sound like a lot until you realize each one cracked open a decade of patterns he'd never examined. The counselor told him something he wrote on a sticky note and put on the bathroom mirror. "Love your mother. Protect your wife." They are not the same verb. Leanne had called me just the girl who got pregnant. But the girl who got pregnant was now Clara's mother, Joel's wife, and the only person in the Ashford family who gave Leanne a second chance. 6 months later, I sat on our front porch with Clara, sleeping in the bassinet beside me, her fist curled around the edge of her blanket like she was holding on to something she'd already decided was hers. Inside, Joel was grading papers at the kitchen table, red pen in hand, radio on low. The street was quiet. The evening was warm. On my phone, the photos were still there. Every page of the list. Every line of the email. I hadn't deleted them. Not as ammunition. As a reminder that the truth doesn't need volume. It just needs to exist where people can find it. I didn't win by screaming at my mother-in-law at her own party. I didn't win by staging some grand takedown or rehearsing a speech in the mirror. I won because she put the truth in writing, left it in her own printer, and I was brave enough to let 35 people read it. The people who write lists of reasons you don't belong are usually the ones who've spent their whole lives terrified that someone will write the same list about them. Vivian had 47 reasons. Fear has a way of being thorough. An envelope at a baby shower. 47 reasons on paper. An email on the last page. A husband who tore the whole thing in half. If someone in your family ever handed you a list of reasons you weren't enough and you're still standing, what did you do? Have you ever had a moment where you had to choose between keeping the peace and revealing the truth? Tell me your stories in the comments below. I really want to know. And if this resonated with you, give it a like and subscribe. I'll see you in the next story.